The official position of Biden, the Biden lawyers, the Democrats in Congress is Joe Biden is not an imbecile. And the special counsel should not have called him an imbecile. And yet, that's the only defense, which isn't even really a defense, that the special counsel said Biden could invoke if he were to indict Joe Biden and bring the case to a Democrat jury in Washington, D.C., where he said there's no reasonable expectation that they would find him guilty. A brilliant lawyer friend of mine and my family, Nat Lewin, who's litigated innumerable cases, including in front of the United States Supreme Court, sent me a note. And Nat Lewin said, really? Well, if Joe Biden had been indicted and the case were heard in a Republican town, in a red state, would it still be the position of the special counsel that Joe Biden wouldn't be convicted? Of course he'd be convicted. His point being, you bring the charges as they come. And the idea that he wouldn't be convicted, perhaps not in Washington, D.C., but as a matter of law, as a matter of law based on the facts, is not and should not be the case. You might remember when this report first came out, it was quite substantial. I went on Blaze and I went on the Fox. I waved it around and I said, this report provides material, specific evidence of more than a score of felonies committed by Joe Biden, Senator, Joe Biden, private citizen, Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States, under the 1917 Espionage Act. And the argument that he cooperated once he was caught 40 years later is not acceptable. As I've said then, and others have since repeated because they're smart to repeat it, that's not a defense. When you murder somebody, when you steal something, when you embezzle, but I cooperated after I was caught. And so this issue of obstruction in Donald Trump, let me deal with this as a footnote. Under normal circumstances, with an attorney general who wasn't a hack of the president, with a real experienced domestic prosecutor, not a hatchet man, like special counsel, for which there is no special, Jack Smith, there would never have been a criminal process. You don't criminalize these cases, certainly not against a former president who has special executive authority under the Constitution. He is the executive branch. How can he steal stuff from himself? And when a president takes documents with him, because he is the executive branch, he is the second branch of government, he cannot be said to be stealing classified information or violating the Espionage Act, because he can't. So they raise these unique constitutional, perverse constitutional questions because they're out to get his scalp. I am the only one that I know of on Fox, on Blaze, on radio, who talks about these things, who served as chief of staff to a former attorney general of the United States of America. One of the greatest of all time, one of the strongest when it came to law enforcement. There is no way in hell he would have approved a criminal warrant against the next president when they're debating the issue of whether or not he can keep the documents or not in negotiating. There's no way. There's no way he would approve the use of FBI SWAT teams to go to the former president's home to seize the document. It never would have happened. If Attorney General Meese thought somebody was intransigent or that there was something we could do, first thing he would do is pick up the phone And he'd call the individual and he'd say, hey, look, we got to have this material. We don't want to create a whole, issue here. This is the situation. And if that didn't work, maybe, not likely, but maybe he'd pursue it on the civil side. On the civil side. There is no way in hell he would have gone for a search warrant, sent a SWAT team, seize the documents, create an obstruction scenario, and then indict a former president who's already announced that he's running for the presidency again. It never would have happened. Never. Not under Ed Meese. Might have happened under Bill Barr, but it never would have happened under Ed Meese. Ever. The special counsel report concludes that Biden repeatedly violated the Espionage Act. He committed felony after felony over a period of decades in different offices and out of office. That he lied about it on key occasions, including when he was talking to his ghostwriter. None of this should be a surprise to you. I discussed it thoroughly and extensively with you right here behind this microphone, as well as on Blaze and on Fox. That's the truth. Which is why people are talking about a double standard. Here you have Joe Biden, according to this report, who left the material in 7 different places over the course of his career. 2 different places where he lived, different places with his office, kept moving it around. Donald Trump took documents with him, or people packed the documents for him, and he took them with him on a helicopter to Mar-a-Lago. That's it. That's it. Hillary Clinton's not prosecuted. She wasn't charged, even though the case is overwhelming. Multiple felonies, if you want to apply them under the Espionage Act. She wasn't even vice president. She was Secretary of State, for God's sakes. She's not protected. She doesn't run the executive branch. She's an appointee. She has no independent declassification powers at all. Neither did Biden at the time we're talking about. None. He literally stole documents out of the Senate SCIF. There is no defense for that. And he kept it for decades. No defense whatsoever. None. There's no defense when the man says to his ghostwriter, they don't know that I have these. What were these? Notebooks of his card notes of classified information. Even his staff tried to get that from him before he left. But he kept them in secret, and then he used them with the ghostwriter to make money on a book. That's what happened. Trump had his documents. That's a former president of Mar-a-Lago. Biden had him in open boxes. He had him in his garage. He had it where people could access it. Mar-a-Lago is like a fort. You only get in if they let you in. It's guarded by the Secret Service. Now, this was a fascinating hearing. So we're going to take a break, and I want you to hear some of this because most of you in this audience, you actually don't have time to watch TV all day long and to watch these hearings all day long. I will help you. This is information I want to confer on you because according to the Democrat Party, they know Joe Biden is a crook. They know that he took money from communist China. They know that he didn't pay all his taxes. He set up 2 S corporations while he's yelling about people paying their fair share. We know all about Joe Biden, a reprobate, a career hack politician who's never spent a single day in the private sector, not one, but wants to run it with an iron fist. Who is this man? This self-serving, self-promoting, self-aggrandizing narcissist. Well, I just defined him. And so now you see Mr. Hur has to be destroyed. Not Mr. Smith, who changes the law, who demands that the courts comply with his demands. He cuts short due process rights, attorney-client privilege, the right to appeal. He and his favorite judges in Washington, D.C., they're destroying the system while claiming to protect it against the man that they're targeting. Hur didn't do any of that. Hur was praised. He was quiet. Oh, he's a good Republican. Because they didn't fear Hur. Because he's not a Jack Smith. He's not a Weissman. And so he puts out this report. And they are desperate to smother it and him. And yet, like with Comey, the report goes on and on. You go, okay, wow, this is unbelievable. But we're not going to charge him. Amazing, isn't it? Joe Biden escapes accountability, number one, because he's president. But if Hur were Jack Smith, he would have indicted him anyway and said, that's not in the law. That's been a position of the Department of Justice, but we need the courts to sort this out. Because Jack Smith is burning down all comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, all traditions, all precedent when it comes to the law. Because that's what the man does. He's a nut. He's an absolute nut. Here, Hur says, no, we got to worry about that. Plus, the jury in Washington, he won't say it, but I'll say it. They won't ever convict a Joe Biden. No. But they can't wait to convict a Donald Trump. And that's what Nat Lewin's point was. They bring the case against Trump in Washington, D.C. because they figure it's a slam dunk. The judges, the jury, the press. But they don't bring one against Biden because they know it's a slam dunk in the opposite direction. Because there isn't equal justice in Washington, D.C. There isn't equal justice with the Justice Department. There's certainly no equal justice with that crooked creep Joe Biden.